Ian Lindsay of Lindsay and Associates has played an active role in the local community since 1979. He has been with RE/MAX, Vancouver Island's most advanced real estate business network, since 1996, marketing and selling residential, rural, strata, recreational, investment, and project development real estate. You'll find true real estate professionals at ianlindsay.ca.
Peter and Dave, they're on the mic, so right. Join the ride, it's gonna feel just right.
Welcome back to the Pulse Community Podcast. I'm Dave Graham. We are coming to you from the middle of Vancouver Island, roughly speaking, and we are getting set for another fabulous summer here in paradise.
And I'm Peter McCulley. Yes, with the change of the season, campgrounds and calendars are filling, and there's enough live music to keep you busy every weekend from now until the leaves turn.
Oh, that's another thing I need to add to my list of things I want to do before September. See more live music. Oh boy, this summer list is getting full. I might have to drop something to keep it realistic. Okay, I'm going to scratch off watch every documentary by Ken Burns. That should be on the winter list anyway.
Well, Dave, it's good that you're not getting carried away with it.
I had one item on my list, complete a 10K run. Yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm admitting defeat before I begin on that one. Instead, I've changed it to read walk more briskly. I need to keep my goals within reasonable limits, I think. That's number 27 on my list, right after learn to make sourdough from scratch. You know, it's possible I may have too many things here.
You'll want to make room for this one on your list, Dave, and that's taking in the action in Port Alberni as HGTV's Hometown Makeover is there. Sarah and Brian Baumler will be on the ground for the next couple of months, making it happen.
That is such wonderful news. Port Alberni has many things going for it, and I just can't wait to see how the Baumlers can make it even better. I've been watching Brian charm his way through construction and repair projects like many of us for a long time now, and, well, he inspires me to improve my handyman skills. Although I have to admit, I still don't know the difference between a left and a right-handed hammer.
Well, on today's podcast, Dave, we're joined by two guests who are each doing something remarkable in their own corners of Vancouver Island life. First, Laura Palmer of Port Alberni has just released Season 9 of the award-winning podcast, Island Crime. Laura is a former CBC producer, and her true crime storytelling is some of the most meticulous, victim-focused work in the genre.
The series is about the unsolved murders of Elizabeth and Andrew Kosonic. They were stabbed to death in their own home just south of Nanaimo in a community called South Wellington in June of 1959. I had never heard anything about the case, like I knew absolutely nothing about it. I'd never run across it anywhere until last year when I was approached by their great-great-granddaughter, who on her own has been researching the case and trying to understand this horrible tragedy in her family. She's a listener of my podcast and thought it might be something that I could kind of work on together with her. So that's what we've been doing for the last 6-7 months.
An unsolved murder from 1959 and a determined great-great-granddaughter. Wow, Laura Palmer, she is a leader in an extraordinarily competitive field, and we are proud she is an Islander.
Also with us today, Cheryl Dill, president of the Parksville Beach Festival Society. Cheryl oversees one of the largest summer events on Vancouver Island, drawing over 100,000 visitors to the Parksville Community Park each year. And this year's festival is shaping up to be something special.
We had 119,092 people through the gate, almost 120,000. That is one of the highest amounts of visitors we'd had through that gate since 2015. In 2015, we had a banner year. It was just over 130,000. I'm not sure why that number was strong in that year. We were gobsmacked, but it had been trickling downward. And then with the pandemic, it really was challenging to bring it back up. But last year was a really strong year.
Almost 120,000 people in Parksville for BeachFest, as it is known. This is a destination event. There's a real sense of civic pride when I think about the international recognition and all the people. Well, I feel also a bit of anxiety about finding a parking spot, but mostly I feel civic pride, and I am proud to be associated with it as the official DJ of BeachFest. I think I can call myself that. Have I mentioned that I'll be there?
Well, it has been a couple of minutes, Dave. We're also excited to tell you about a brand new podcast that has joined the Pulse community. We invite you to check out Too Old or Movie Gold, in which host Olin Vanderleen of the Comox Valley gathers a panel together to weigh in on classic films. Gen X nostalgia meets fresh perspective from millennials and Gen Z. It promises to be a lively debate.
The first episode is about Backdraft, the firefighting action feature directed by Ron Howard. Joining the panel are Nanaimo Bay Fire Department members Caitlin and Trevor Holm. They come from a 3-generation firefighting family, just like the brothers in the film.
Coming up on future episodes here on the Pulse Community Podcast, Doug Picard joins us to talk about the value of exercise and battling Parkinson's disease. It is a genuinely hopeful conversation, and we're looking forward to sharing it.
And we have Jamie Wallum of Salt Spring Island. He's the drummer for Tears for Fears, one of the most iconic bands of the 1980s. I have to say, I only just learned of this. This is pretty cool, my friend. I don't know how you scored that one, Peter, but well played.
And Carly Carey will be here to tell us about Carly's House in Nanaimo. It's a free, welcoming place for people to stay while undergoing cancer treatments. There's some remarkable work being done there, and it is a story worth hearing.
Hello.
Hi, is this Rhonda Carlson?
Yes, it is.
Hey, Rhonda, it's Peter McCully calling from the Pulse Community Podcast.
Hi there.
How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you.
You probably know why I'm calling, right?
Well, I have an idea.
Have you seen April Wine in concert before?
No, I haven't.
Well, this will be a good time to see them. Dave Graham just pulled your name from the draw drum, so we've got a couple of April Wine tickets for you for the opening of BeachFest, just so that you don't have to stand through the whole show. 2 folding camp chairs.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you.
And we've also got a $100 gift card courtesy of Thrifty Foods, so you can get some snacks for the concert.
Oh, that's just awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. And I think the first time I saw them was 1972.
Oh, my goodness. Where was that at?
It would have been the Canada Day celebration weekend in Amherst, Nova Scotia.
Oh, really? Wow. Isn't that something?
Yeah, I wasn't old enough to drive. But...
I'm not going to tell you how old I was. But no, I'm looking forward to seeing them. That'll be so great.
Summer on Vancouver Island doesn't get any better than this. Parksville Beach Festival is back. And this year, the theme is Beauties and Beasts. 30 international master sculptors will transform tons of sand into breathtaking works of art right on Parksville Beach. Grand opening is July 10th with a ribbon-cutting ceremony at 2 p.m., and opening weekend delivers something truly special. On July 11th, iconic Canadian rock legends April Wine headline the Van Rock Interiors. Opening weekend concert, 16 albums, 11 Juno nominations, and a legacy that puts them in the company of the all-time greats. Tickets are on sale now. This is your summer. Don't let it pass you by. Parksville Beach Festival, where summer magic begins. Visit parksvillebeachfest.ca.
Stay tuned to the podcast and our website and social pages for our upcoming summer giveaways. Watch for contests for BeachFest Rocks and Blue Rodeo.
Blue Rodeo in Parksville. Oh, just letting that sink in. I'd put that on my summer to-do list, but I didn't get tickets, and I'm not allowed to enter, apparently. But you out there in podcast land, well, you are. Aside from that, we have an impressive list of concert options: Sunfest, BeachFest, April Wine, the Nanaimo Blues Festival, Rock the Range, music at the museum, so many great shows. I'm going to have to put off learning how to scuba dive.
Details and all the contests at thepulsecommunity.ca. And it's time to hear about BeachFest. Here's Marilyn to introduce our first guest.
Cheryl Dill is president of the Parksville Beach Festival Society, overseeing the summer festival that attracts over 100,000 visitors annually. Held in the Parksville Community Park, the world-renowned quality food sand sculpting competition also offers 5 weeks of live entertainment.
Cheryl, so nice to see you again. Welcome back to the podcast. And I'm so excited to be talking to you about Beach Fest for this coming year.
Thank you, Dave. I love the podcast. I love listening to the podcast. I think the work that you folks do is fantastic.
Unsolicited, that was. Now, how was last year, the 2025 festival, in terms of overall attendance number, and how does it compare to years before?
We had incredible numbers last year. It was first for us because we moved site for the sand sculpting exhibition. We were at the round site closer to the gazebo and very close to the gathering place. And we've worked with the city to shift our site. So we had 119,092 people through the gate, almost 120,000. That is one of the highest amounts of visitors we'd had through that gate since 2015. In 2015, we had a banner year. It was just over 130,000. I'm not sure why that number was strong in that year. We were gobsmacked, but it had been trickling downward. And then with the pandemic, it really was challenging to bring it back up. But last year was a really strong year. We're really excited about that. And we think that it's, on an upward trend again.
Did the new location have an impact on that, or in terms of how you manage the whole event and crowds and all of that?
We'd like to think that it did. I mean, these days with getting the word out there, social media, word of mouth is always huge for us because so many residents bring their families, bring their friends, come out and visit and we'll do the tour around Parksville and the area. And the sand sculpting exhibition is one of the main goals that families have to take visitors through because it's such a inspiring festival. The new location, we did a lot of marketing around that. We had an additional sculptor in there. It was our first year trying to figure out, is this site actually bigger than the round? Is the rectangle larger than the circle? And we had to do some math on that. It's slightly larger, but not necessarily in a sand sculpting way. It's just more for the sculptors to be hosted and eat their lunches. And we have an area where you play your music. And we also have an area there where we can host, this year for the first time, we're going to do a Sands and Sounds arts and craft festivals for families right inside there. We're really excited about that. So it gives us a little bit more space to be creative with the site. So we're going to do that. One of the reasons why we ended up moving there in collaboration with the city is because where we were before, it was blocking the vista view of the ocean and where the gathering place was. Plus, there's a lot of pedestrian activity there crossing traffic. And now where we are, and it's right beside the large gravel parking lot and behind the curling rink, and also there's paved parking by the curling rink. It's much easier for people to get out of their vehicles, walk along the path, not cross moving traffic, and come right to our site. So I think that helps and the word gets out there that it's accessible.
Last year, the Pulse Community Podcast was on hand for a little while. It was Peter and yours truly, and we talked with any folks who would put up with us for a moment. And they were from the island, of course, in Mexico, Netherlands, of course, all over. And that's evidenced each year by that wonderful map put up with the pin showing where everybody came from. And when you take in that kind of expanse, does it ever make you just shake your head and wonder?
It does. And just listening to you talk about that gives me goosebumps right now. Because when you think about, here's little old Parksville, we're doing our thing and we're all modest as a community. And yeah, we're proud of where we are, but the whole world knows where we are. I like to think that's the case because when you look at that diversity of visitors and where they come from by evidence of the pins on the map is incredible. And you remember Joan Lemoyne, she used to have a book of comments, like a guest book, and she used to encourage people to tell her where they're from. It's still the same, bless Joan's heart. We did some analysis of all of that, and the majority of people that do come to our event are from Canada. But we have a huge portion, like 20% from elsewhere in the world. And yeah, from Greenland, yes, from Japan, yes, from Australia, New Zealand, Madagascar, you name it. Like they're identifying that they're coming from all over. And it really is wonderful to see that diversity come into our community. And it helps our community grow and appreciate what we have. It really does. So it's incredible.
There is a theme for the sand sculpting portion of the festival each year, and I'm wondering how that is chosen.
Yeah, exactly. Why do we have a theme? First of all, having a theme is a lot of fun because we get to be a bit more creative. When we decide on a theme, what happens is we ask our board directors and our volunteers and our event managers, let's narrow down some ideas. We've got a running list from many years of ideas. and we revisit that and then we add to it. And then what we do is we ask our sculptors. We narrow it down to a few possibilities. We ask our sculptors what their favorites are. And many years we put it out to the public for voting. And so the public and the sculptors chose Beauties and Beasts for this year. It's a well-known family-friendly kind of theme. You could say Beauty and the Beast, but it's not really that Disney show. It's about all things beautiful and all things beastly, and there's a lot of that in the world. There's a lot of creativity. It could be everything from an inclusion kind of concept to scary and wonderful things about our lives. What will be interesting, Dave, is how the sculptors interpret that. What we also want to do is always choose something that's kind of universal theme and family friendly, because we want to inspire sculptors to think about entertaining the masses, and they love that, but also be able to tap into their creative side and bring forward some things that are important to them with their sculpting. So we'll see what they come up with.
I'm wondering, in terms of the sculptors, the process of getting in, of being a part of all this action, must they apply? How does that work?
Yes. So that is a process. And what we do is we align our criteria with other sand sculpting competitions around the world. And we also ensure that if there is a world championship, and there hasn't been one for a while, but that our participants and our finalists and nominees for those awards are capable of then carrying on to the world championships. Basically, what we're looking for are people that have master sculptor experience, or they've had significant amount of experience in other competitions, and that they have sculpted in, number one, sand professionally, but also maybe in other media, like perhaps they're ice sculptors, snow sculptors. Many of them sculpt sandstone or other types of rock. Some of the sculptors work professionally designing sets for movies. When you'll see like a lot of natural looking backgrounds of rock, they sculpt those things. It's quite interesting, their backgrounds. We're looking for some significant professional experience and recent experience. People that apply, they've been in other competitions. Many of them are in the Race Against the Tide, which is still happening this year, for that CBC competition that they do. And that's a lot of fun. Many of them are coming from that, and many of them are carrying on after our competition to the Riviera Beach competition in Boston. A lot of them this year are doing that, actually.
Do you get more applicants than you have spaces?
Yes, that is always a challenge. So Wendy Sears, our beloved event manager and marketing manager, she has the fun job of narrowing down, putting it out there. She has a great relationship with so many sculptors around the world. And she puts it out there, sends out the criteria. And then, first of all, we always offer spots for those who previously won in our competitions. For the soloists and the team events last year, the doubles, they always qualify. So that is 8 spots out of 22. Then we always recruit from new and other existing sculptors. And so this year we have about 30 sculptors altogether. And I think 3 of them are going to be new this year, and the rest are old hat to this community, and they're just lots of experience. So we're really excited about that.
Let's chat, if we can, about the People's Choice Award. I'm thinking in terms of the angle of participation involving the public so that they are part of this whole thing.
I love that. And you know what? The sculptors kind of covet that award because they know their sculptures have been standing for 5.5 weeks, and they've had the analysis and the observations from almost 120,000 visitors. So when we announce that, they jump for joy if they're the successful winners. Sometimes the results are very similar to what the judges choose on the opening weekend, and sometimes they vary. And I think last year we had quite a variation. We had over 110,000 votes or close to that. So we give everybody a voting chip when they come through the gate, and then they can walk around and select which ones that they prefer in terms of their favorites, what spoke to their hearts, what spoke to their minds. They love that. That's a great way to pull people in and gather their input.
As for those special evenings when these works of art are illuminated, how long has that been going on for now?
I think we started that in about 2015. actually. It was such a brilliant idea. And I think Wendy Sears, our former event manager, and she currently works with us to help promote and market our event. It was her idea to, Lynn, why are we not lighting these things up at night? Because the intricacies of those sculptures, there's so many edges and curves and things that you don't see in the sunlight. When they're lit up at night with beautiful colors, purple, greens, pinks, you really see them in a different perspective. It makes for beautiful camera shots. It's magical. Really, it feels like a very calm version of Disney. You don't have to wait in those darn lineups. It just feels just magical and beautiful. And then when you add a harpist like Sarah, who's been playing the harp for so many years for us, it just adds an extra special touch. And so that whole light up weekend is incredibly magical. And if it aligns with the Quality Foods light up show, the whole fireworks, then that just makes for an incredible weekend.
Opening weekend, always a major draw. How was last year's show, if you have any reflections on it, and what are the plans for this year?
We were incredibly honored to host Chilliwack's Farewell to Friends tour. We were honored that they selected us as part of their closing performances. It was well attended. It was magical for people there because they understood the meaning behind it. It brings back memories of listening to Chilliwack through the 70s, 80s, 90s. It was a successful event. And it was year 2 that we did an opening concert. The first year when we did that, it was Trooper. That was fantastic. Chilliwack, another great, memorable evening. And then this year, rock icons and Canadian Hall of Famers, April Wine. Coming from Nova Scotia, my home province. My sister lives in the place where many of the band members lived as well. Yeah, I remember sitting on Citadel Hill watching many a Canada Day concert with April Wine serenading us all. I'm really excited to have them here. We also get to feature Tumbling Dice, which is a beloved Victoria band that have been in our park entertaining our crowds for a few years now. They're a fantastic country band, country rock. It's going to be a great opening weekend. That's Saturday, July 11th. There's still tickets, actually. So I think people are waiting to figure out, what am I doing this summer? But I'll tell you what, you won't regret coming to our BeachFest opening weekend, taking in the sand sculptures, and also seeing April Wine perform.
Lloyd Derry has once again associated himself with BeachFest, or maybe you could put it into words just what he does for this event.
Lloyd is one of our board directors, and he's incredibly passionate about music. He's one of the many volunteers that works really hard on putting our whole festival together. Lloyd has been working with a team of volunteers to put together the whole concert lineup this year. But one of the things that he's incredibly excited about is actually the Blue Rodeo concert, and we're working with a company out of Victoria to make that happen. That's Collective Entertainment and Events Group. We've partnered with them. They signed the contract with Blue Rodeo, and we're hosting it. So we're sharing all the work together. If there's proceeds from that concert, and we hope so, because it is a fundraiser for us to be able to carry forward and keep doing what we're doing, we're splitting those proceeds so that we can work on another incredible band acquisition for next year. It's a big thing for our town to bring a band of this stature to Parksville. So we have to think about so many things. We want to make it memorable and fun, but we also have to mitigate the risk involved in having that many people in the park. It'll be a little bit bigger than what we're used to for some of our concerts. April Wine will be a big concert too, and Trooper and Chilliwack were. So we learn from those. It's at the same site. We will have a few more people in that site than we're used to for those other concerts, but it's tried and true. We've got a good plan in place to make sure everybody has fun. We will be serving alcohol, so that's a whole risk management piece, and Collective Events and Entertainment Group have a really strong handle on that. We've been working with the local RCMP, working with our municipality to make sure it's going to be a success. One of the great things that Brian, our events manager for the theater, has done in concert with Lloyd is secured a shuttle service that if you want to be able to not park down close to the park, but park perhaps by Wembley Mall or further up here in the city and not bring your car into the park, or down the other end of Parksville, past the Orange Bridge and not bring your vehicle, then there's going to be shuttles going back and forth from one end of the community to the other. We're really excited about that. And people can buy tickets for that shuttle through the MAC box office as well.
Yes, it goes without saying that these kinds of things can't happen without a lot of free help. Volunteers make all the difference in the world. What do you have to say about them?
Oh my gosh, our society is all based on volunteerism. We do pay contractors for some expertise, like our event managers. We have 3 event managers that work between the theater and the sand sculpting exhibition, plus one of them helps us market. So we pay for those services, but everything else we do, for the most part, is volunteerism. Our board is entirely volunteer. Our gate ambassadors that greet those 120,000 people that come through the gates, there's 150 volunteers there. We also have about 45 to 50 volunteers for the theater. Everybody is really passionate about what they do. They understand the concept that giving back to the community gives them purpose and aligns with what's important for them. They've got some talents and some abilities to share, and that's what they want to do. Come out and share what they can, whether that's physically helping to set up a fence or helping to prepare the sand sculpting site so that we can chain off all of the sculptures and dig some holes in the sand and make sure that happens. Put all the scrim up around the fence. Put some lights inside the exhibition. Remove some of the garbage and keep the washrooms clean so that everybody can enjoy that park and feel comfortable there. Preparing the theater, making sure that the performers have what they need behind the stage. All of that is volunteerism. Some of that may not sound like fun, but when you're working with other volunteers for a great cause, there's great camaraderie, great pride in a successful event. It just connects you with other people that feel the same way as you do, and you just feel good by doing something that's worthwhile. As a volunteer, my work is year-round, just because I'm the president of the board. So we meet every month. But then I also, in the summertime, there's extra stuff that I like to do. But people have choice. So if you don't have that much time to volunteer and you can only volunteer on August the 5th for a fence setup, then we embrace you and say, please come and help us. So we love connecting with volunteers and meeting new people every year. I would say about 90% of the people that are our volunteers, they're returning every year. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun.
And if it isn't too late, would people just check out the website for how to follow up with that?
Absolutely. If you haven't already volunteered and you want to figure out how, there's our email, info@beachfest.ca. There's our phone number on that site. Christy, our wonderful event manager for the sand sculpting site, has that phone every day and is checking it. So by all means, just get in touch with us and we'll put you to good work. We'll make sure you have a purpose in the park.
Another important component of an event like this is the relationship with the business community. Quality Foods, Canadian Tire, Tim Hortons, Coastal Community Credit Union, Mid-Island Co-op. What do you have to say about these partners?
Oh my goodness. Again, you're giving me goosebumps. It's not a difficult thing to get sponsorship coming forward. It's work. We want to communicate with our sponsors, but this community has been incredibly generous. I can't say enough about Quality Foods. They've been by our side for so many years. They were the instigators in 1982 about getting Beach Festival underway. And in our new format, they didn't walk away. They were always there. So I'm so grateful for Quality Foods. And then all those other sponsors you mentioned, Coastal Community Credit Union, Canadian Tire, Van Rock Enterprises has come on board for our opening concert 2 years in a row now. Really happy to see new sponsors come on board. The generosity of them is incredible. Mid-Island Co-op has been so great with Beach Fest Rocks every year, and they're going to support us in a different way this year for Blue Rodeo concert. So we're incredibly grateful for all of that generosity. We've got over 100 sponsors, so I apologize if I didn't mention you and you feel offended. I'm so sorry about that. We're so incredibly grateful. We have them on our website. We sculpt them in the berm, and we do what we can to acknowledge them, because without them, without their support and without them backing the whole purpose of what we're doing, we just can't do what we do. So we're inspired by our sponsors every year.
I can promise that I'll mention them as long as I'm there doing the DJ thing.
About that. You're so good about that. And I'm so grateful for you playing music and entertaining the masses on the weekend for our opening weekend at the sand sculpting site. You just add that ambiance, Dave. You and Sheila do such a great job.
Any last words or thoughts, reflections, great stories, whatever to add to this?
I'm just grateful to have this conversation with you, because when you're busy working on an event, sometimes you don't take your head out of the game and say, hey, what actually are we doing here? It's a good reminder just to be grateful for the opportunity to work together with other like-minded people like yourself, to share a common experience that brings joy to so many. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak about it. I think that what Peter McCulley and you, Dave Graham, do, and the team that you have with your podcast, it's a wonderful thing. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks to Cheryl Dill for joining us. This year's theme, Beauty and the Beasts, promises some extraordinary works from the international group of master sculptors, and the opening weekend concert featuring April Wine on July 11th is going to be one of the summer's highlights. The grand opening is July 10th with a ribbon cutting at 2. Get your tickets now. Details at parksvillebeachfest.ca.
April Wine, live in Parksville, Canadian Music Industry Hall of Famers, 16 albums. Wow, Canadian rock royalty. Saturday evening, July 11th. They are going to rock the park. Ooh, what a night. See what I did there?
April Wine fans are with you on that one, Dave. And we have new stories for the kids coming out each week with our Skookum Kid Stories featuring Captain Dave and the crew of the Mellow Submarine and Peter and Gracie the Eskimo Dog. And our kid stories now come with coloring pages to go along with each new episode.
On this week's episode of Peter and Gracie, Gracie loses her squeaky toy, Hector the Hedgehog. I don't want to give too much away here, but I'll say this. If you have ever lost something important to you and couldn't figure out where it went, this story will resonate deeply.
We invite you to dig into our Radio Archaeology Classic Radio series with original episodes of Dragnet, featuring Sergeant Joe Friday and Gunsmoke with Marshal Matt Dillon.
And we hope you will take in another offering from a member of the Pulse community. Cindy Thompson of Parksville hosts a resilience project. This week, Caleb Dahlgren survived the Humboldt Broncos tragedy. He beat the odds with type 1 diabetes, and he wrote a #1 best-selling memoir. His story of resilience is unforgettable.
This country was moved as one by the Humboldt Bronco story, and Caleb Dahlgren's story is one of perseverance and purpose. That's a conversation worth making time for.
You'll find these podcasts and more at thepulsecommunity.ca. And while you're there, sign up for our newsletter and keep up to date on the latest podcasts, guests, and contests.
At Thrifty Foods, we love to help nonprofits, charities, and schools. Our Thrifty Foods Smile Card bulk program allows organizations to immediately save up to 6% on the purchase of Smile Cards in bulk, allowing you to keep more money in your organization's pockets. Ask for details at Thrifty Foods in Parksville.
Ian Lindsay of Lindsay and Associates has played an active role in the local community since 1979. He has been with RE/MAX, Vancouver Island's most advanced real estate business network, since 1996, marketing and selling residential, rural, strata, recreational, investment, and project development real estate. You'll find true real estate professionals at ianlindsay.ca.
Dave, I can't help but notice that your summertime to-do list is getting a few revisions.
Oh, I'm rewriting the whole thing, Peter. I'm scratching off learning to walk a slack line. There just isn't time. I'm going to have to postpone the windsurfing lessons and the bonsai tree project. Well, that just isn't going to happen this summer. But, I got to be flexible, change with the times, need to get caught up on the latest season of a podcast created practically just down the road from us.
Yes, that's a worthy pursuit, Dave. And our next guest has spent years sitting with stories that don't have easy endings, and she tells them with the kind of care and rigor they deserve. Here's Marilyn.
Laura Palmer of Port Alberni is the host of the award-winning podcast Island Crime, a true crime podcast for listeners who love in-depth, victim-focused storytelling. Laura has just launched her 9th season of the highly rated true crime series.
Thanks for joining us on the podcast today, Laura.
Thank you for having me on again. I really appreciate it.
I'm eager for our listeners to learn what season 9 of Island Crime is all about. The new season has just been released. It's entitled The Dead File. Perhaps you can give us an overview of the series.
The series is about the unsolved murders of Elizabeth and Andrew Kosonic. They were stabbed to death in their own home just south of Nanaimo in a community called South Wellington in June of 1959. I had never heard anything about the case. Like, I knew absolutely nothing about it. I'd never run across it anywhere until last year when I was approached by their great-great-granddaughter, who on her own has been researching the case and trying to understand this horrible tragedy in her family. She's a listener of my podcast and thought it might be something that I could kind of work on together with her. So that's what we've been doing for the last 6-7 months. And the first episode is out now.
The season title comes from a stamp on the actual police folder, Dead File, no further work to be done. When you saw that stamped on the double murder case, what went through your mind?
What we're generally told with unsolved cases by the police is that, there's no such thing as a dead file, that the cases will always stay open. And yeah, they may be dormant for a while, but they're never closed. So that was the first time I had ever heard of the idea of a dead file. And in fact, in the series, I interview a retired RCMP detective from Nanaimo who helps me out a bit trying to understand this release package. And he said he'd never heard of the idea of a dead file either. So either it's quite unusual or it's the kind of thing that perhaps was more common 7 decades ago. But in any event, it's the first time I came across a file that was called a dead file.
Now, the episode starts out with you and your husband chatting about the news of the death of Rob Reiner and his wife, and comments made by your husband regarding stabbing deaths in particular. Your husband has some insight into crime itself.
Yeah, so my husband is a judge here in Port Alberni. He has had in his courtroom many violent cases, of course, and he was actually a defense attorney and a Crown before that. So a fair amount of experience in the criminal world and in the violent criminal world as a lawyer. His first reaction to Rob Reiner's death and the death of his wife was, yeah, a stabbing in their own home, that's probably a family member. And that's, within seconds of it coming across the wires. I was thinking about that when I was beginning my work on the Kosonic case, because they too were stabbed to death in their own home, a couple. Although initially, and in the reporting on the story that I've read, the police are framing it as a robbery gone wrong. The family has always believed that it was more likely that their son-in-law was the guilty party.
Well, tell us about Shauna, Andrew and Elizabeth's great-great-granddaughter. What made you say yes when she came to you with this file?
Well, first of all, she was almost, I'd say, reluctant to bring the file to me. Like, she said, I've been doing this work and it's important to me, important to my family, but I get it if you don't want to take this on. It's almost 7 decades old. There's never going to be a court case. No one is ever going to be brought to legal justice. And maybe you have more important, more pressing work to do. All of these kinds of things were kind of going through her head, and we talked about that. But the more I learned about the case, the more I thought, it doesn't matter that it was 7 decades ago. These were 2 victims, 2 community members who met a violent end and whose murders have never been solved. I talk about the old Harry Bosch saying in the series, everybody counts or nobody counts. That certainly seemed true to me in Andrew and Elizabeth's case. And I should say, I call them Andrew and Elizabeth at the outset, but everybody in the community knew them as Lizzie and Curly. Later on in the series, that's also what I come to call them by because, as you get to know these people, they just become more familiar to you. And I think listeners, even though it's a 67-year-old case, will really relate to and connect with Lizzie and Curly as they go through the series and learn more about them.
As you say, you're going back 67 years for this case. That's a long time. Wouldn't that make finding out any new details even more difficult?
Yes and no. So I'll tell you the no side first. we were able to access some archival material, including a coroner's report, autopsies, psychiatric records, this kind of stuff that in a open and unsolved case, if it was just a few years ago, you wouldn't get to see any of that right now. So that part was easier. The part that's harder, of course, is I normally begin my work on each season by talking to family and friends. In this case, there are very few people alive who knew Lizzie and Curly in life. I should say very few. There are some. And in fact, after the trailer dropped, I heard from even more. So there are still people alive here on the island and actually elsewhere who knew Lizzie and Curly, who remember them, who remember the murder. There's also, of course, this story now has been passed down through generations. So there are people who say, oh, I remember my grandmother, I remember my father, my mom, they were neighbors, they talked about this, they knew that. So although that part was a little harder, it is interesting to hear how the story has rippled down through the years. Certainly in Shauna's family, their descendants all have a story to tell about how it has impacted them and what the story is exactly that has been passed down through generations.
It sounds like those archival records and psychiatric files, being something that you might not normally have access to, would be very valuable.
Absolutely. What happened back then was there was a coroner's inquest that happened quite soon after the murders, where they interview the people who found the bodies, the first police on the scene, the last people to see them alive. So it's kind of like a little play in a way, because you have all of these characters saying exactly what they saw, what they observed. And then the autopsies themselves, I'd never seen this kind of detail in terms of an autopsy before. So I actually had a retired coroner help me take a look at that autopsy through a medical examiner's lens, which was really helpful because there were so many medical terms in there. That was really helpful to have somebody with that kind of expertise go through it for us. The one thing that I will add to the challenges in terms of telling this story, which may surprise you or may not, I don't know, the police have yet to release the full file to us. We have a heavily redacted file, which largely consists of administrative notes. Even though this file is 67 years old, the RCMP at this point are still reluctant to release the details of the investigation. So Shauna and I have both launched complaints to the Information and Privacy Commissioner. So we're still hoping that more will be released.
Now, you've mentioned in past interviews when we've talked about new seasons that in all of the stories you tell, you return to visit the scene of the crime. This being 67 years after the fact, where were you able to return to and what were those impressions that stand out for you in this particular case?
As it turns out, and this I think listeners will find quite fascinating, the house, which is described as the murder house in the newspapers back then, is still standing. I went there right at the very beginning of all of this and kind of knocked at the door, and the owners were lovely, invited me in. They were also open to Shauna coming to the place where her great-great-grandparents were murdered. And so that house actually figures quite prominently in the series because even though there have been some changes, some additions, a lot of the original structure is still standing. So when you look at the coroner's report and you kind of imagine this is where this happened and this is where that happened, we were able to kind of walk around the house and try and go back in time a little bit and picture how it all would have unfolded in the very place where they were murdered in 1959.
We'll certainly be glued to our chairs as this series unravels. It sounds very, very interesting.
I think it's a super interesting story. And I think, as Shauna has said, you learn a lot about a family's history and some dark chapters and a lot about the investigation. It ended up being an 8-part series. As I think you know, Pete, if I learn more, it will become longer. So I always kind of keep working on things. So as I said, after the trailer dropped, new leads on a 67-year-old murder file. I'm hopeful that that will continue to happen as the series carries on.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because my next question was going to be about updates. I wanted you to tell us about Jeff Ingram. He is one of your update interviews, and he's discussing his experiences with dissociative amnesia, and that is tied to the Ian Indridson vanishing January 2022.
So you're right. In between seasons, I go back and try and update earlier series because, podcasts are a kind of funny thing in that they never have to really end. And so if you get more information or you think of a new perspective, you can update things. When I was researching Ian Indridson's case, Ian, of course, disappeared from his Victoria home in January. Kind of out of the blue, this senior government official just wakes up one morning and he's gone. His wife at the time raised the possibility of me, like, could he be in some sort of fugue state? I didn't really know much about this at all. So I started researching just what exactly that was, found a fellow from down in Washington State who has had dissociative fugue experiences, I think he said 5 times over his life, one which lasted, I think, about 2 years, and another that lasted 9 months or so. The most famous one involving Jeff. He's headed up to Alberta to visit a dying friend in his truck. The next thing he knows, it's 9 months later and he's in Colorado. He walks into a hospital and kind of says, hey, help me. I don't know who I am, where I've been, nothing. There's a TB appeal that goes out, and that's how his fiance at the time finds out what happened to him. And I guess the point is, Ian Indridson's wife still wonders to this day, could that be the kind of thing that has happened to her husband? It's really unusual. It's rare for sure. But in the absence of answers, it's just one of the things she wonders about.
I was reminded of season 1, Where is Lisa, which digs into the disappearance of 21-year-old Lisa Marie Young, when I saw a billboard on the back of a bus last week.
Yeah, the family and friends of Lisa Marie Young are so determined and so creative that they really try and think of everything they can to keep her name, her face out there in the community. So they were approached by an organization called the Little Red Dress Project, which works with families of missing and murdered Indigenous women to try and, keep their stories, keep their cases alive. They're the ones who have funded that campaign. As I think I've probably talked to you about before, this is one of those cases that the answers are in the community. There is still a suspect alive, and I hope one day will be brought to justice. But this kind of thing, like the bus campaign, keeps it out there, keeps the pressure on, and hopefully one day there will be justice for her family.
As you mentioned with the family of Lisa Marie Young, the stories that you cover on Island Crime involve families who need resources and support in their fight. How can listeners help?
Every case is kind of different in that way. I would say in Lisa Marie Young's case, the family really appreciates it when people turn up at the annual March for Justice, which happens on the Canada Day weekend every year. Throughout the year, they quite often have other smaller events. They also appreciate people, joining the advocacy Facebook page, and that's something a lot of families do. Ian Indridson's wife has a Facebook page for him. That's something that I think families do appreciate kind of across the board. If they're of a mind that they want the community to be involved and to support them, they quite often will have a Facebook page and do like to see people joining and supporting them there. But yeah, every family is a little different, I would say. And some families do something like Lisa's family do with the annual march, have an annual event, a walk, sometimes around the date of the murder or the date of a disappearance. They're all so different. Just, people, we're all so different, right? I would say for the most part, it's just remembering and caring about their families. People appreciate that. Of course they do.
Now, 9 seasons in, your audience has grown. You're an award-winning podcast, and those listeners expect things from you. They follow the cases, they have opinions, and they send you tips.
They do. It's true. I had a note the other day. They said something about me and my team. Could somebody from the team get back to them? And I chuckled a little because the team is myself and my cat and my dog. The team is only me. While I really love my listeners, they are amazing and they're so loyal and supportive. I do at times feel like it's important for people to understand that I work alone and I like it that way. But that does mean sometimes it can be a while between seasons or updates or, just new episodes. It's not the kind of podcast where there is going to be something out every week. The nature of the work is that it takes time. And I think mostly people get that.
Now, you've spoken very openly about bad faith actors in the true crime podcast space. What separates responsible true crime journalism from, let's call it, exploitation, and how do you hold yourself to that line?
I try not to be sitting up on my pedestal judging other people because, people feel differently about these things. And some people enjoy listening to podcasts where it's more conversational and people are kind of having a glass of wine and chatting about the details. And I think that's fine. I would say for me, these are serious stories with huge impacts on people's lives. So the tone I tend to take, it reflects that. But I get it. The true crime space is huge and there's such a range of kinds of choices out there for people. The one thing I would say, I hate it when there's true crime stories where they glamorize or make these monsters into celebrities. I will just say I listened recently to a series out about Clifford Olson and it made my skin crawl. They're playing tape of Olson's voice throughout this series. I just think that's wrong because as anybody who lived in BC and lived through some of this remembers, he loved the limelight. That was his whole thing. So giving him that kind of time feels just wrong to me. But again, I hate criticizing other people's work. I stopped listening after just a little bit into that series. So I don't know. Maybe there's some redemptive qualities to it. I don't know about.
Laura, I know that you and your sisters who have writing background, documentary backgrounds, I can't help wondering after I listen to the podcast if there are books or documentary series down the road.
I occasionally think about that. But for now, honestly, I personally have my hands full with doing an audio podcast right now. There aren't really enough hours in the day to cover these stories in as much depth as I want. So who knows, in the future, maybe. But right now, the audio podcast is absolutely my main focus.
Laura Palmer and Island Crime, Season 9. If you have not listened to Island Crime, now's the perfect time to start. And if you're a longtime listener, you already know how good this is. You'll find links to the podcast in our story notes at thepulsecommunity.ca.
If you have someone in mind you think we should be talking to, then please speak to us. You can reach us and leave a voice or text message. Head to our website and click on the contact link. You'll find us at thepulsecommunity.ca. You can also find us on Apple, Amazon, iHeart, Spotify, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also on Facebook and Instagram.
Oh, I have to get a grip on my summer schedule. I was planning to grow my own wheat and then mill it for sourdough bread. I think I'm going to have to scratch that one.
How is that list coming along, Dave?
You know what? I just realized there's so much going on. I'm going to have to reverse direction completely and concentrate on simplifying. One thing at a time there, Peter. And you know what? I'm going to throw away the list. No need to list anyway. I'm going to focus on my next big thing. That's BeachFest. Oh, did I mention that I was DJ for that? Yeah, I probably have. Yeah.
Here come Peter, here comes Dave. Oh, listen. Bringing stories, making waves. No missing.